Okay, welcome to another of my chess analyses. Also played on RedHotPawn.com. This was not a tournament game, but a clan game. I was playing against a similarly rated opponent from a different clan. I had the white pieces this time. I played e4, my standard opening. He played c5, that's the Sicilian, knight f3, d6, which is also a very popular second move in the Sicilian. Then I played d4, this is the open Sicilian, which I like. I love to be able to mix it up in the middle of the board and not get into closed systems. What fun is that? C takes d4, the open Sicilian, knight takes d4, again the open Sicilian, then he plays knight f6, attacking this pawn, again a classic move in the open Sicilian. I played knight c3, so far very much still in the book. He plays g6, he is aiming for a Sicilian dragon, something that I play a lot with when I'm black, so I am used to facing it. Playing it, I'm used to seeing it a little bit. I played bishop e3. I'm setting up the Yugoslav attack. I hear people always tell me that playing the Sicilian dragon, which I do, is dangerous because of the Yugoslav attack, so I figured maybe I'll try it on my opponent this time and just see how dangerous it is. He continues with the dragon setup. That's bishop g7. The reason why it's called the dragon, by the way, is because this pawn structure over here on H and all the way through the D file looks like the constellation Draco, so they call it the dragon. But anyway, I decided to continue with the Yugoslav attack, which is f3 is the next move. The reason why you play f3 over here is you want to prevent the knight from coming down here to g4. Eventually, the idea is after he castles, you put the queen on e2. You take the light squared bishop and you put it out here or here, and you castle queenside and use your g and h pawns to start a pawn march. And in the meantime, you have your queen, your bishop, and maybe a knight, another bishop, and your pawns and your rook over here in the h file, maybe the other rook over here coming across in the g file. You send your pawns down, and hopefully you launch a major attack on his king, and you're able to trap him in the corner and mate him. The thing that you have to watch out for is the fact that you're going to castle over here and put your king on c1, and his rook eventually might end up on c8, so you're attacking his king side, he might attack your king side, so you have to watch out. It's considered a very sharp variation, the Yugoslav attack against the Sicilian dragon. He castles, again a typical move. I played queen d2, typical move in the Yugoslav attack. Knight c6, sometimes is done a little bit earlier in the game, doesn't really matter, it's transposed into it. I castle queenside. Again, the idea here, you want to be able to move your h and g pawns down the board without having to worry about exposing your king. He plays d5, actually a variation in the Yugoslav attack, but I calculated, this is a correspondence game, so I had some time, I calculated that I could win a pawn. And the way to win a pawn in this case was very simple, so rather than going for the complicated Yugoslav attack, I figured I'd win the pawn by first removing his knight. Knight takes c6, b takes c6, and then notice I've gotten the knight out of the way. I now have four pieces attacking this pawn over here, and he's only got 3 pieces defending it. So I play e takes d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, and now I'm up a pawn. Now, of course, that does make it very dangerous. The fact that his b and c pawns are now off the board means that he can come down here with his major pieces. He can launch attack on my king. But hey, you figure it's worth a pawn to expose yourself a little bit. And also his king side, although it looks pretty safe over here, could eventually come under heavy attack. Then he plays knight takes d5, so I of course play queen takes d5. This again I think is still a variation in the Yugoslav attack. I don't think we're really necessarily out of the book, but black has sacrificed a pawn over here. He's gotten some open space to attack my king a little bit later on in the game. He's gotten a very, the quote-unquote dragon bishop, the dark squared bishop in the Sicilian dragon defense has beat on this square over here, which could be critical if his rook comes here, if his queen perhaps can come here. But the thing is, over here, the reason why I did this, and the reason why I wasn't worried about it, is because I figured at this point he pretty much has to trade the queens off, because he now, obviously he can't just leave his queen there because I've got 2 pieces attacking it and only 1 piece defending it. Also attacking his rook on a8, and there's no way the queen can move, and actually the truth is the bishop can move. He could just trade off the queens anyway. So he can't move the queen and save the rook at the same time. So now, I guess he saw that, and he realized he's down a pawn, and if he goes ahead and trades queens, we have a relatively balanced game over here. The pawn structure, he's got a pawn side majority on this side, but I have a passed pawn on the c file. He decides it's time for something radical. Rather than trading off the queens, he plays queen c7. Again, setting up the queenside attack. Now, obviously, that leaves the a8 rook hanging. So it looks like the game over. I just take it, but it's not really so much over. And I realized that it wasn't over because basically he is going to force me, in essence, to trade my queen for both of his rooks. And the way, I'll just play it out here, I'll show you how that works. You know, I of course played queen takes a8, even though I realized I was going to lose my queen by doing this. But I'll discuss in a moment why I thought it was worth it. Because his next move is to expose an attack on my queen and threaten checkmate at the same time. You know, if you're a somewhat new player, you might want to pause it over here and see if you can figure out what black can do now to win the queen and really to save any chance at winning the game. He has his bishop over here that's blocking an attack from his rook on my queen. So what's his move over here? His move is bishop f5. Now bishop f5 really forces me to lose my queen because there's no way that I can stop checkmate and defend my queen at the same time. Because if I move my queen back, obviously here is the only way to stop mate, and then he just takes it with the bishop, and he's won a queen for a bishop and a rook, which gives him definitely an advantage. So my only chance is to stop the mate, but before I stop the mate, obviously I want to do an in-between move to get the maximum bang for my buck, and that of course is queen takes f8. That of course is with check, so it forces him to take the queen, and then of course I can go ahead and defend against the mate. In general, obviously, when from a point system perspective, they say a queen is worth 9 points and rooks are worth 5 each. So if you just look at it from that perspective, clearly the two rooks are a little bit stronger than the queen. Also, of course, I have an extra pawn. So after this whole exchange, I am going to be down. I'm going to be up 2 points, 2 rooks and a pawn to a queen. So generally, that's clearly an advantage, but the more pieces there are on the board and the more mating possibilities there are, the stronger the queen becomes. You know, at the very, very end of a game, you'd definitely rather have 2 rooks than a queen. But in the middle of a game where things are still open, there are pawns to be picked off, there are, possible attacks to be made, sometimes a queen can be as strong as 2 rooks or even stronger than 2 rooks, depending on the position. So he plays bishop takes f8. Perhaps queen takes f8 could have been explored a little bit also, but I guess he was worried of the back rank mate. Oh, actually, if he takes it with the king, then he has to temporarily worry about a back rank mate of rook e8. If the queen ever leaves this area, then rook e8 would be mate. So he takes it with the bishop. I think the taking it with the king might have been a little bit of a stronger move to get the king in better position. The king. You can see we're headed toward an endgame, and the further the king is away from the area, the tougher it's going to be eventually. So I play bishop d3. I have to somehow defend against the mate. I could have also played rook e2, but I wanted to develop my bishop. Why not? Clear the back ranks, link them up for the rooks, get my 2 bishops next to each other, and I would love to trade down at this point. Anything that he wants to trade is perfect with me because I know the longer I last with the 2-point advantage and the longer my 2 rooks hang on the board with his queen, the better it's going to be. Now he makes what I think is a little bit of a mistake. I think, trading off losing the pawn, I think is actually a book variation, believe it or not. Trading the 2 rooks for the queen is probably a little bit of a mistake. But here he plays bishop takes d3, agreeing to trade off the bishop. So I play rook takes d3. Obviously I can't take it with the pawn because that's pinned against the queen. And now you can see how we're really headed toward the endgame. A major piece endgame, obviously. We each have a dark squared bishop, which obviously I'd like to trade off if I can. But even so, my dark squared bishop, you can see, is in at least as strong a position as his dark squared bishop. His dark squared bishop is trapped all the way in the back rank. It can get into the action relatively easily, but his king is a little bit further away from the action. I've got a pass pawn on the c-file. I've got 2 rooks. I'm in good shape over here. He plays bishop g7, developing it. It has to be developed again because it was back in its original spot. Now, I could simply play bishop e4, which would be a logical move. The reason why I didn't is because I wanted to use the opportunity. Obviously, this pawn is hanging at this point, so I have to somehow defend this pawn, defend the b2 pawn. But I want to try to strengthen my pawn structure a little bit at the same time. So I played g3 away, and of course, I want to move this rook eventually. I have a rook on the 3rd rank over here. I'm going to want to move this rook to d1, and I can't do that as long as this pawn over here, this h pawn, is hanging. Well, this isn't hanging because my king is here, but of course. But so I played g3 because I wanted to be able to move this rook to the e file and link it up. You know, in converting this kind of an endgame, and again, whenever you're going against a queen and you have no queen, you have to worry about quick checkmates, and you also have to worry about perpetual checks. So the game is never over until you're able to neutralize the queen somehow. So I want to link up my rooks. Whenever you have two rooks in an endgame or in a middle game, also, you want to try to link them up because they work together when they're best when they're protecting each other. So he plays h5, a little bit of a kingside play. He realized that my rooks are coming over to the middle. He has a kingside pawn majority. I have a queenside pawn majority, so he's going to have to try to play on the queenside. I play rook d1, obvious move, get it on the open file. Now I totally control the open file. He's got no rooks, nothing he can do to ever get control of that file as long as the game goes on. He plays queen b7, threatening to take this pawn over here. c3 rather than b3. I don't